Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 16 of the Paddy and the Yank podcast. Paddy, how the hell are you doing today?
Fantastic, Mr. Fox.
Mr. Fox, Foxy boy.
Foxy lady.
Space Fox! I've
What
never
does-
heard a better nickname than Space Fox.
Who's Space Fox?
My buddy had a dog, and he always called his dog Space Fox. And I was like, oh, this is the best name ever. So now I have this one student. I started calling him Earth Fox.
Earth Fox.
And this is embarrassing. My student didn't know what the word Earth meant. So I had to, I'm teaching online now because of the vid. And I had to pull up a picture of Earth to show him what Earth means. I was like, that's you, baby. You're the Earth Fox.
This kid is literally a baby, right? I mean, how old is this kid?
8 or 9.
8 or 9.
He's a retard. I'm joking. They're all retards. It's not wrong because I'm saying it wrong. I'm joking. Well, I don't know. Some days I hate teaching. Let's go on.
What do we got for today's topic, Yank?
Dude, we're talking about serial killers.
Serial killers.
That's hot and heavy, baby.
Did you watch the new John Wayne Gacy documentary on fucking Netflix?
Oh, man. I did, and I didn't know how many episodes were in it. And the first night I started watching it, I think I watched one episode, and then I was going to watch another one. And I was like, wait a second. I know what it's like when you binge on a series, and then you try to go to bed. Like, the characters are in your head, and you're, seeing them. And I was like, dude, I do not want Gacy's face in my mind when I'm trying to sleep. So I purposely limited myself to one episode a day.
Man, I watched 2 of them the first night, and then I watched the last one on the second night. Yes, for anybody that's listening that doesn't know who John Wayne Gacy is, can you enlighten us a little bit on that?
Yeah, cool. So, it's weird because, we know all these names. Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy, Ed Gein.
Ted Bundy.
But, I don't remember exactly what they did, how they did it, why they did it. So, watching that Gacy series, I didn't know any of that. So, he was, a well-respected member of society.
Yep.
Right? And I can't remember, he was, the president. He also, there's a picture of him with the president's wife. That's how well connected he was.
And this happened when? Wasn't it back in the 70s?
I think the late 60s.
70s, 80s?
Might have been when he started, but I think this was mostly in the 70s.
After watching this, you realized how fucked up he was, you know?
Yeah, and for me, it's really strange because I love the Joker. I love the Joker, and I love House of a Thousand Corpses and The Devil's Rejects and these movies about serial killers.
Yeah.
And I usually find humor in it. I always find humor in these movies, and I always laugh really hard. Like when the girl, Rob Zombie's wife in House of a Thousand Corpses, she puts on this old funk song and then starts slicing this dude up with a shaving knife. And I laugh with her. She's laughing. I'm laughing. I think it's hilarious watching people get tortured and killed. But then...
That's pretty fucked up.
I know. It's messed up. But then when I watch this documentary, it puts it in reality for me. So, now it's not something I'm laughing at. I'm like, whoa. So, what Gacy did was he lured gay boys and young men to his house and then would try to convince them to perform sexual acts on him, or he would perform sexual acts on them, and then he would kill them.
Yeah, and usually he would trick them into wearing handcuffs.
Yeah.
What scared me so much about this is how remorseless he was and how arrogant he was about it. Because in the documentary, you hear tapes of him being interviewed from prison.
Right.
And how fucking swarmy he is and how fucking remorseless he is and arrogant he is about what he'd done. That's a scary fucking guy.
That's a psychopath, right? The psychopath is the one that doesn't feel remorse.
Yeah.
And the sociopath does feel remorse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A complete another psychopath.
He said those exact words. I don't feel any remorse.
Yeah.
He said those exact words on one of his tapes. It was so interesting how when they busted him, he immediately wanted to confess everything. That's how big his ego was.
Crazy.
He always wanted to be in control of every single situation.
Do you know what the definition of a serial killer is?
I don't, but I can guess.
Go for it.
Somebody who does repeat kills in a similar fashion. That'd be my guess.
Okay. According to this, a serial killer is typically a person who murders 3 or more people. And it's usually in service of some kind of an abnormal psychological gratification. So a serial killer is somebody who gets some kind of psychological gratification from murdering people.
Psychological gratification?
Yeah. So it could be
So like
Usually sexual. A lot of times it's sexual. They get sexual gratification from killing somebody.
we talked about that before, right? Sadism and masochism. And God, do you remember which one it is?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay, sadism is the tendency to derive pleasure sexually from inflicting pain, suffering, or humiliation on others.
Yeah.
So masochism is when you receive sexual gratification by receiving pain. So I guess I'm a masochist.
They said the psychological gratification is usually the motive for serial killing. A lot of the times the murders are committed in a similar fashion to the previous murders that they would have done.
Okay.
So that's the same thing with Gacy. A lot of his murders were very, very similar. Like how he killed his victims, how he lured his victims back, and what he'd done with his victims. But when you see a documentary like that Wayne Gacy documentary, it really lets you know, and it really solidifies the fact that human beings are the scariest things on this planet. Now, in Ireland, where I come from, we grew up on ghost stories. Irish people are fascinated with spirits and ghosts and all this kind of thing. It's like if I went home to Ireland, to my house now, I got sisters and a brother and my mother and all that. We were to sit down there in the living room and have a few drinks and a chat. You can be guaranteed that after about an hour and a half, after a while, once the drink's been flowing, somebody's going to start talking ghost stories. Someone's going to bring it 100%.
That's awesome.
And the thing about it is they fully believe in this, right? Like ghost stories, legends. This is when we were kids and we would hang around at our auntie's house or our uncle's houses, and they'd be all start drinking. One of them would have a story about a ghost, and everyone would believe it. Like, especially if he was like, one of the higher ups in the family. Like, do you know what I mean? So when we go back home and we tell ghost stories, your mother, when she tells hers, everyone goes quiet, and they all believe her when she's telling it, because she's like, you know what I mean?
Wow.
She's the head of the family, and it's like, so she's deadly serious when she's telling ghost stories, and everybody around them believes it. But I don't believe in, not that I don't believe in all that stuff. I always say to my sister, right, one of my sisters, we all love horror movies, but she loves ghost movies, and she's terrified by them. So what I said to her one day was, I said, what would you do if you seen a ghost? She goes, I don't even know, I'd freeze up, I'd freak out. And I said, well, if you seen a ghost, wouldn't that mean that there's something after you die? So if you've seen a ghost, one, you should be happy, because it confirms, oh shit, there must be something after I die if I'm seeing you and you're already dead. And the second thing is, name one time in history someone was killed by a ghost.
But that would be under the pretense that you're assuming being a ghost is a pleasurable thing.
I didn't say anything about being pleasurable. I said it confirms that there's something after you die.
Yeah.
But exactly, would being a ghost be a pleasurable thing?
Yeah, maybe
or
being
not?
a ghost isn't fun, right?
Yeah, there you go. So maybe it's hell. Maybe being
What
a
would
ghost
you
is
do
hell.
if you saw a ghost?
If I seen a ghost, well, I don't think I'd be scared, because one, I know that there's no incident in history that's been recorded that someone has died. Why did Tom die? On Tom's death certificate, he was murdered by a ghost. All ghosts seem to do is come into your house and fucking rearrange a few things and bang a few doors. It's like it seems like it'd be more of an inconvenience to have a ghost in your house than it would be to be scared of a ghost, because nobody, as far as I'm aware, has ever been killed by a ghost. I don't think on anyone's death certificate it's cause of death, ghost.
Yeah.
So anybody that's out there that's scared of ghosts, don't be so scared of ghosts.
You should tell a ghost story on the podcast sometime. That would be cool. I've thought about it before.
Okay, I'll tell a ghost story in the podcast someday. I'll ask my mother or something about it, because the Irish people have tons.
That's cool.
Of
That sounds
stories.
fun. I can imagine like the scenario you're just describing.
Yeah.
I would like to be a part of that someday. It sounds like a blast.
A lot of the times it's like, old Tommy down the road. Now wait till you hear this now. Wait till you hear this. I'm telling you, and this is the truth. And everyone in the room would be just beside like, this is the truth. He came home one night. Now, listen to me now. He came home one night. He went into the kitchen. He didn't turn on the lights or nothing. He went straight into the bedroom. And when he got up the next morning, the light in the kitchen was on. Now, you tell me Tommy's lying. And that's kind of the way to go. And then he'd be like, isn't Tommy an alcoholic? That's besides the point. Tommy didn't turn the light on when he came into the house, and he's sure as hell he didn't. And but they're so certain about these things. It's kind of amusing, but I enjoy that when I go back to Ireland. I enjoy hearing the ghost stories and all that, even though I don't really believe in it so much, but I still love hearing those tales.
Sure.
When
I think my stepdad if like my cousins would come stay the night at the house, this is what he would do. I think he would tell a story, and then he would leave the house. And we lived on like a country house with a barn surrounded by cornfields. And then he'd go get a mask or something, and then he'd come up and like jump up in front of the window. And like my cousins would always start crying.
I love that kind of shit. I love that kind of shit.
He loves scaring us.
That's brilliant. So when I watched the Gacy documentary, that's the kind of shit that scares me. That's why as a kid I was always more into like let's say the Halloween movies or the Friday the 13th movies or the Scream movies or the serial killer movies, because they really scared me because I knew that was possible. Like there's human beings out there that really do this kind of fucked up shit, just like John Wayne Gacy. You know, it's the same kind of a thing. And Ted Bundy, these people, they are scary, man.
Well, it's demented how they caught him. The detectives were following him 24 hours a day, and then Gacy even started like having coffee with them, eating dinner with them, inviting them into his house. And then they were in his house the one day, and the one had to go to the bathroom, and he wanted to take that as an opportunity to try to find something. Mm-hmm. Didn't find anything. Goes to the bathroom, and then the heater kicks on.
Yeah.
And he smells a putrid smell from the heating vent. And as they were veterans, he immediately knew that was the smell of a dead body. And so they needed to get a second search warrant, because the first search warrant, they didn't really find anything.
Yeah.
And the second search warrant, that was when they started digging under the house and excavating all the bodies.
In the crawl space under
Just
the
like,
house.
imagine that. He lived there. He buried these bodies, which means he smelled the smell of rotting flesh all the time, and he was used to it.
That's exactly what I said to my girlfriend when we were watching it. I was like, he lived in that house, that small house with 33 bodies buried underneath the fucking floor.
He was married for a while.
He was married for a while, yeah.
I think he was killing while he was married.
Yeah, he had 2 kids as well.
Because he was gay. Before they got married, he like confessed to her. He's like, I'm not gay, I'm bisexual.
He's bisexual, but he had a hatred for bisexual and gay people, which was kind of demented as well.
You said something earlier about psychological gratification, and that's why serial killers kill, and it made me think, like, what is that?
No, it's not. Sexual gratification is not why all serial killers kill.
No, I said psychological gratification.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, psychological,
which is interesting because, like, if you think about it, like, Gacy's dad was really mean to him and was always disappointed. And so I think Gacy was, like, he got psychological gratification by taking control of these boys. You know, by handcuffing them or by tying them up or by strangling them. It gave him power. He felt empowered. And I think that is the psychological gratification you're referring to, right?
Yeah. That's very interesting that you say that as well, because that would make it sound like because he had a bad upbringing and his father was bad to him that he developed into becoming a serial killer. Whereas in a lot of reports by experts or psychiatrists or whatever you want to say, they reckon that serial killers are not in fact made but born. That they are born with the defect in the brain or something like that, and that's why.
Well, we're all born with the ability to be cruel, right? And what sets us apart from serial killers is that, and I said this on the podcast before, but our ability to control our cravings. Like, you know, sometimes if you see a pretty girl, I'm sorry to say this here, but you have the craving to just like want to have intercourse immediately. But obviously we can't do that. It's wrong. But a serial killer would come up with a way to maybe try to lure her back and then kill her and then feel guilt. Yeah. Or, I mean, have sex with her and then maybe feel guilty or something and kill her.
Yeah. It's pretty mental.
It's extremely mental.
So, after watching that documentary too, it kind of got me thinking, and I was like, I'm going to do a little bit of research and try and figure out a little bit more about serial killers. And who was the first serial killer?
That's a crazy question.
When was the word serial killer coined? Like, when did they come up with the phrase serial killer?
So we're going into the origin of serial killers.
Well,
I hope it's better than Spider-Man's origin story.
Any of those fucking origin stories.
Jesus.
Except The Joker. The Joker was a brilliant movie.
So good.
Go watch The Joker.
It's the only movie I've watched twice in the theater, other than Titanic.
Brilliant. such a fucking contrast. Twice to watch The Joker, twice to watch Titanic, but I thought Titanic was a great movie.
I never watch movies alone. I love Joker so much. I went a second time alone to watch it. I identified with it. I don't know. I understood it. And so many people have. It became a fad. Joker has become a fad. Why do people love characters like Joker and Harley Quinn so much? Obviously I do, but why do members of society, like normal people, why do they identify? Why do they love the Joker so much? He was a madman.
Possibly because stuff that he does, people would fantasize about, or, you know, if they get in an argument with somebody, they would fantasize doing something about it or whatever like that. So they live vicariously through the character of the Joker, I guess, on screen. And because he comes across in that movie, especially, the one Joaquin Phoenix, as being so real, being so human and so real. I guess that could have something to do with it.
Do you think some people like want to just go batshit crazy, like? Because then like your inhibitions are gone. Like if I have no rules, if I can do anything I want, then that means like when the lady at the vape shop made me mad yesterday, I could have just fucking beat her. You know, I could have strangled her. I could have killed her if I don't have rules.
It would be a scary world to live in without any kind of rules or organization.
It would be like The Purge.
It would be. And it would be completely and utterly survival of the fittest, in a way.
But that's how serial killers live. They don't have rules. Me and you have rules. Yeah. We have rules of engagement.
That keep us in line. That keeps everybody in line.
Yeah.
I think everybody has the potential to snap and
Can I confess something? Sometimes my students, they make me mad. And they are being bad. They are getting out of line and stuff. And so I have to yell at them. And every once in a while, I'll get disappointed if I yell at them and they don't cry. And sometimes if I yell at them and they cry, I get gratification from it.
You're ticking all the boxes here.
I know.
You're ticking all the boxes here.
But like that's something innate to derive satisfaction from someone else's suffering.
I don't know. It's in us all in some way, I guess.
Well, then some people don't want to see an animal die. They want to eat them, but they don't want to see the animal die.
I don't want to see the animal suffer or die needlessly. If I had the chance in the future to hunt my own meat and only eat that, I'd feel like I'm doing a service to the population of animals that's in the world, more so because I'm not contributing to factory farming.
Yeah. How many people do you think would still eat meat if the only way they could eat it was by going out and hunting it and killing it themselves?
I bet you that will go down a hell of a lot. That would drop like crazy.
Oh man, I don't think people could handle it.
No. Anyways, do you want to hear about history's first serial killer?
Dude, totally. Lay it on me.
All right. So history's first serial killer was a guy called Gilles de Rais. I think he's French.
Is he racist?
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. It's spelled Gilles, then DE, then RAIS. So I don't know.
R-A.
And he was a Breton nobleman.
Breton?
I don't know what that means. Breton nobleman.
Yeah,
and he was around in the 1400s, right? And he was a comrade of Joan of Arc, and he fought on the battlefield with Joan of Arc. Now,
I'm sorry, did you say what year this was?
In the 1400s, yeah.
The 1400s. Holy moly.
So this guy, Giles, let's just call him Giles. I don't know how to pronounce his name. He had an outstanding career as a soldier, fighting alongside Joan of Arc, and he would have guaranteed his place in history only if it wasn't for the fact that he was a fucking rampaging psychopath that lived a secret life. So he was the perpetrator of more than 100 gruesome child murders.
Whoa.
And this made him arguably the first serial killer in recorded history.
Over 100 children.
Over 100 children.
You gotta wonder what caused that. Like, what would make somebody want to kill children?
Well, according to this article, both his parents died when he was young. His father died in like 1415, and supposedly his father was killed in a gruesome hunting accident, and young Giles was there and seen it. And then his mother died of unknown causes or whatever like that.
So maybe he was jealous of children that had parents. And he's like, I didn't get to have loving parents, so you can't have loving parents either. I don't know, it's a speculation, but you got to wonder, there's definitely a root and a cause to the reason serial killers, like Gacy he never killed a woman. He only killed gay boys and gay young men. And he killed them out of, I think, shame, because he was ashamed that he enjoyed sex with men.
This Giles fella, the first serial killer, supposedly the first serial killer in history, he was also a respected member of the community. He built some kind of a church, and like I said, he was an honourable, brave soldier. But then, as the years went on, rumours began to circulate that a lot of children had gone missing in the areas around this guy's castles. And many of the disappearances seemed to be connected with the activities of this guy and his servants. This guy would have had castles and stuff like that, and of course he would have had a lot of servants and maids, and these children were going missing in the area. A lot of children were going missing. People were starting to take notice of this.
Sounds a little bit like Elizabeth Bathory that we talked about very recently, because I think she was in a castle as well, or she got imprisoned to a castle. I still love the visualization that she bathed in virgin blood. Oh my God, that's so twisted.
So back in this day too, it wasn't uncommon for like boys to go missing, and they would end up being servants or whatever. I mean, we're talking the 1400s, you know what I mean? It's not like today.
Yeah, there's no way to track anything or keep track of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But witnesses started seeing a lot of his servants disposing of like loads of bodies of children.
Wow.
So witnesses started seeing this, and around his castle. But the families of these victims were scared because he was so wealthy and so powerful. They were scared to do anything or to pursue it. But then in 1414, he kidnapped a priest after some kind of a dispute. He had some kind of a dispute with a priest. This wasn't related to the murders. When he was put on trial for kidnapping this priest, it also came out about all about the child murders, and he had a fucking range of charges brought up against him: heresy, sodomy, and the murder of more than 100 children. So they threatened to torture him. I mean, we're going back to the 1400s. It's not like today, like, when it's all secrets. Like, they're like, we're going to torture you if you don't tell us, like. And again, this is back in the 1400s. I imagine they had some pretty fucking barbaric ways of torturing people.
I can't believe they just gave Gacy the death sentence. I feel like he got off too easy.
Way too fucking easy.
Way too easy. Oh man, that's so easy. That's such an easy way out.
He got to spend 14 years in prison.
And that was one of the things he said. He's like, in the end, I even win. I killed 33. You only killed 1.
That's mental.
That's mental. He's
That's
right,
fucking
though.
Scary.
He's right.
He is right.
It's fucked.
He got to linger. He got to sit in prison for 14 years after killing 33 boys.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I got 33. You only got 1. Haha. Jesus.
Under the threat of torture, this Giles fella confessed to the charges and described ritualistically torturing dozens of children kidnapped by his servants over a period lasting nearly a decade.
Whoa, his servants would go out and kidnap the children
his
for
servants
him?
would go out and kidnap the children, and he would torture them and murder them.
How do you get your servants on board with that?
You're talking the 1400s, man. He would have had power. Servants were nothing back then. They would have been nothing. They would have had nothing. No say in anything. And, he was sentenced to death anyways by simultaneous burning and hanging. Now, that sounds to me like a bit more of a fucking...
Yeah, that's what Gacy should have got.
That's
like,
what burn him and fucking hang
torture.
him. Torture. That's what happened to this guy back in the 1400s.
Should have Hannibal Lectered his ass.
I'm fucking telling you. So they executed this guy on the 26th of October, 1440.
Pretty close to Halloween.
Very close to Halloween. Get this. Get this, right? He was sentenced to death by simultaneous burning and hanging. Giles had been contrite and composed in the face of execution. This bizarrely brought him posthumous acclaim as a model of Christian penitence. A 3-day fast was even observed after his death. And in one last nauseous irony, a tradition emerged in which parents around Nantes, which is where he was executed, they commemorated the anniversary of his execution by whipping their own children, perhaps to impress upon them the gravity of the sins for which he had repented. This practice is believed to have survived for more than a century after his death. Now, in modern times, revisionists and people have looked back and questioned whether or not he was actually guilty of the crimes which he was executed for. Again, his confession was extracted out of him through means of torture. And a lot of the times people will say anything when it comes to torture. But he did describe in detail what he'd done to these kids, didn't he? So, I guess he was probably guilty. So that's it. This Giles de Race is supposedly history's first serial killer. Do you know who's the most famous serial killer of all time?
Can I guess?
Or the most, let's say...
Notorious?
Most notorious serial killer
Okay, let me
of all
guess a little bit. Let me ask a few questions.
And I'll read you a quote from this serial killer.
Sure, right. Go ahead.
And then you can tell me who you think it is, who the most notorious serial killer is. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck.
Jack the Ripper?
Yes, Jack the Ripper.
Can you read that again?
I am down on whores, and I shan't quit...
Whores, like girls.
Prostitutes,
okay.
Yeah. I am down on whores, and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck. And supposedly those
Where did
lines...
they find that? In like his journal or something?
I'm not sure. As you know, Jack the Ripper was based in London. He used to murder women in a place called Whitechapel.
Okay. The movie From Hell with Johnny Depp was about him, right?
Yes, that was based on Jack the Ripper, yeah.
Okay.
And I don't think... He was never caught. Jack the Ripper was never caught for his crimes. But he used to mutilate his victims. He would cut off their private parts. He would do a lot of mental shit. A lot of people thought he might have been a surgeon. And then there was rumours that he was a Polish immigrant. But they never caught Jack the Ripper. But I think they believe they know who he is.
And they never caught the Zodiac Killer either.
No, the Zodiac Killer was another...
But I did a little bit of research, and I found that they might have found... Or they speculate as to who he may have been. So, after watching Gacy, I was like, I didn't want to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I'm from Ohio. And so I searched the most famous serial killers from Ohio. So as a result of the Gacy thing, I was like, I'm from Ohio. I feel like a lot of crazy people have come out of Ohio. I've heard it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I searched the most famous serial killers from Ohio. And a lot of serial killers came from Ohio.
Really?
So this is really fucked up what I'm about to say, but I'm going to read you my favorites from this list. I don't know, the ones that jumped out at me the most. So the first one, his name is Edward Edwards, and he was from Akron, which is outside Cleveland. And this was in 1976, 1980, and 1996. So must be the 3 different dates of his murders.
Yeah.
So Edwards spoke about prison reform and promoted his book about the subject after his release from prison in 1969. Pretty close to the time of Gacy.
Yeah. And Bundy.
And Bundy, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so he went to prison for robbery and unlawful interstate flight. 3 years after he got released from prison, he was convicted of his first murder. In 2010, in his late 70s, Edwards confessed to killing 2 couples. One couple were shot in the neck in 1977, and another was killed in Silver Creek Park in 1980. The woman had been raped and strangled, and the man had been stabbed. Edwards shot his foster son in 1996. He is considered a viable suspect by authorities in the Zodiac, the West Memphis 3, John Bennett Ramsey, and other lesser-known murders. So this guy, Edward Edwards from Akron, Ohio, could have potentially been the Zodiac Killer.
Man,
Pretty
that's
fucked,
crazy.
right?
Yeah, fuck.
So this one is much more intriguing. This is Gary Heidnick, and he started killing the year I was born, 1986.
1986.
It's fucked, right? All right, so this is pretty twisted. He abducted, tortured, and imprisoned 6 women in his basement in 1 year. First 2 victims that he murdered, he took their bodies and fed them to the remaining 4 victims. The remaining 4, he routinely exposed them to excessive torture, electrocution, and starvation. The only thing they ate were the first 2 girls that he killed.
That is fucked up. That guy should have been tortured himself.
And then he pinned the women against each other. He would promise them better treatment or food for information about the other women who were making plans to leave. And so he would manipulate each woman individually into telling him if any of the women were making a plan to escape.
Like I said already, don't tell me we're not the most fucked up mental things to ever exist on this planet.
Yeah. So one of his victims, captives, convinced him that she could be trusted to leave the house. He had already let her roam throughout the house away from the basement. All the other girls were forced to stay in the basement. Yeah. And she said, I'm going to leave. I promise you can trust me, and I'll bring you another girl when I come back. And he's like, all right. He trusted her to leave. But instead of bringing another victim, she brought the authorities.
Yes, good for her.
Yeah.
So what happened to him? So one woman got away and she brought the cops to him. What happened to him?
Doesn't really say.
He probably got jail. He probably got life because it's back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Or he could have got the death penalty.
Yeah. Okay, and I got one more piece of information, and it's about Anthony Sowell. And the reason I want to talk about Anthony Sowell is because I remember when this happened.
Really?
It was in Cleveland. I grew up a little bit further away from Cleveland, but I remember because one of the girls escaped from his basement and was found running away from his house. And I remember this was on the news. Yeah. This was 2007 to 2009. I remember this. So after he was arrested, they found 7 dead bodies around his house. 2 were in his living room, and 5 more were found throughout the house. And they found a basket, and in that basket, he just had a head. So then they started doing a more extensive search, and they found 4 more bodies, along with a freshly dug grave. A woman who was brought back to the house and drugged and raped escaped and lodged a complaint with the police. So that's what I remember seeing on the news. She escaped and ran away. His activities went on for so long that for years he was known as the Smelly Guy by his neighbors.
The Smelly Guy.
After many complaints from several different neighbors, the police finally investigated his house. So what led to his arrest was the smell.
Similar to John Wayne Gacy.
Similar to John Wayne Gacy, because his neighbors were just calling him the Smelly Guy because his house stunk so bad his neighbors could smell it. When they finally came in, they just saw his house and how horrible the conditions were, and his victims were scattered about, cluttered and infested in the house.
That's crazy. You know what I think as well when I hear these kind of things? How many times have we been in the company of somebody that's either a serial killer, or how many times would you have passed a serial killer on the road, on the street, and if you're in a busy city, or a psychopath even, you know?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times these people seem like they're normal. Like they seem to live normal lives. On the outside, they look like stand-up members of society and of the community, like Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, it's like, it's even more scary because, like, if you see somebody who's, like, antisocial and, like, awkward and, like, that's the kind of person you expect to be a serial killer.
Yeah.
But then when you find out it's, like, a prominent member of society, that's what you do not expect.
Usually very charismatic, charming.
Yeah, Gacy was very charming and very charismatic.
Same as Ted Bundy.
I don't know anything about Ted Bundy.
Handsome looking, like ladies thought he was very handsome looking. He was tall, extremely charismatic, very intelligent. But again, that just makes him even scarier. You know what I mean? That makes a person like that even scarier because they're intelligent. They're let's say they're in a way they're evil geniuses.
Yeah.
Now,
let me elaborate just a little bit more about this guy, Anthony Sowell. So they called his house the House of Horrors. Between 2007 and 2009. Okay, this dude Sowell was a former Marine, and he was a convicted sex offender who served 15 years for kidnapping, rape, and attempted rape. He murdered 11 women in total.
Oh, man.
He hid or buried their remains in his home and in his yard, very similar to Gacy. When they searched his house, they found a skull, which was wrapped in a paper bag and placed in a bucket. The odor permeating from his house was so overwhelming that people thought it was coming from a nearby sausage shop.
That's again, you like we were saying earlier, how do you live in that stench?
I don't know. So after he raped them, he killed them through strangulation, once again like Gacy. And so he was known as the Cleveland Strangler. He lured his victims, all black women, to his house with the promise of drugs and alcohol. On October 31st,
Halloween night,
2009, the police apprehended 50-year-old Sowell after one woman, Vanessa Gay, survived a violent encounter with him. Authorities were accused of a slow response to the case, which was exacerbated by the fact that some of Sowell's victims were never reported missing, similar to Gacy. Yeah. For others, families could not get police to open up cases because their loved ones struggled with mental health issues and addiction. And that was the thing about Gacy. These gay boys went missing, but the authorities didn't give a shit. They didn't look into it because they didn't care about them.
Yeah, back in the 70s, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they just didn't care because they were gay, and like it took Gacy killing a straight boy for the authorities to step in. His final victim was Robert Peast, I think, and he was a straight boy. He was a normal boy.
That's crazy.
And that was what it took. He had already killed 32 gay boys, but nobody gave a fuck until he killed a straight boy. That's so fucked, man. The police didn't care.
That's crazy.
It's really crazy.
That's crazy. It seems like, too, the 70s was that like a peak time for serial killers? Or was that just because was like a new thing? Because Bundy was the 70s. Mm-hmm. Gacy was the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Son of Sam and that Richard Ramirez, they were the early 80s.
Wasn't the Son of Sam the Zodiac Killer? Or is that two different things?
No, Son of Sam was different.
What was the movie about Son of Sam? Was it called Son of Sam?
I'm not sure.
I think it had Jake Gyllenhaal in it.
Yeah, no, that's the Zodiac.
Okay.
But yeah, it seems
so
like...
Why did this fad start in the 70s?
Yeah, because it's fucking crazy, man. It's like, so after I watched that documentary and was like, fuck, maybe we'll do serial killers in the podcast, I was like, does Ireland have any serial killers? Or did Ireland have any serial killers?
Yeah.
So I done a little bit of research. I found what was Ireland's first serial killers. These two guys. Now, I read the article on this, and to be honest with you, it was so brutal and so disgusting so heinous what these two men done to these two girls in Ireland that, I'm not going to even go into it at all.
That was the cause of your bad mood this morning, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, I usually wake up feeling good, and then I said I better do a little bit of research on this. So I said I'll check Irish serial killers just out of interest, something to maybe to talk about. And it was two Englishmen from Manchester.
Oh, they weren't Irish?
No, One was called John Shaw and the other one was called Jeffrey Evans. And they were both in their 30s and they met in prison in England. And they had a string of offences since they were like teenagers, like 14 and 15, whatever like that. They had already got criminal records of mass burglaries, all this kind of stuff. Now they were wanted, or they had pending charges in England already for like rape of a 16-year-old girl and stuff like this. So after they got released from prison, they both went to Ireland and they made a pact with each other that they were going to go around and just murder Irish women, that they were going to murder women. And that's what they done. They kidnapped a girl and they brutally raped and murdered her. And then they kidnapped, and what they done was they tied a lawnmower to her, wrapped a lawnmower around her, and dumped her in the ocean. And then they got another girl.
Oh shit! I thought you were about to say something way more. I mean, that's demented, but
I won't go into any more details. If you read this story about what they done to these two girls, I swear these two, one of them, as far as I know, is still in prison to this day. And what shocked me was that this was also in the 70s. This happened in the 70s. Same with Ted Bundy, same with John Wayne Gacy, and these guys got prison like. One of them was in prison till he was 68, and then he died of sepsis, I think, which we talked about before in the podcast. So they
what was sepsis again?
It's like a bacterial infection, I think, in the body that yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, what have they done to these two girls? I can't even fucking begin to go into because it was so brutal. So yeah, so those two guys were considered to be Ireland's first serial killers. Two guys that came over from England and planned on kidnapping, raping, and murdering women. And thankfully, but I suppose thankfully they only managed to get two before they were caught. And they got caught and they both got long prison sentences. And one of them is the longest prisoner in Ireland to be ever imprisoned.
Huh. I wonder what's worse, like getting the death sentence like Gacy did, which we both kind of said he got off too easy.
Yeah.
Or like being sentenced to life in prison. Like that seems too easy too. Because then you get to like read books and like just chill.
Make them suffer. Hard labor. Whatever they done.
Labor.
There was a case in... I think maybe it was Pakistan or India. I can't really remember before where this case was from, but it was this guy threw acid in this girl's face. She was I think it was her ex-husband or something like that, and he was jealous of her new guy or something along those lines, and he disfigured her face. He threw acid in her face, right? Now, they caught him, and he got brought to court, and what they decided to do was they asked her what she thought the punishment should be, and her response was exactly the same as what he'd done to me. Throw acid in his face.
Oh my.
You know? Some people might say, I just couldn't see how people could forgive. I wouldn't be big enough to forgive and turn the other cheek if somebody done something like that. Even if they weren't related to me. If I had no connection with the person that they had killed or done this to in such a heinous way, but I got to be in contact with that person, I couldn't do anything but harm them. As we said already, we got some fucked up people out there. The world's a scary place. The world's also a great place, but yeah.
Is there any way for us to end this on a light note? Murder's wrong, but like rape, that's a whole nother thing for me. Like, I don't know how, but like I can see some murders being justified.
Murders being justified? Yeah,
I don't even know where I'm really going with that. But like,
define what a murder is.
Like killing's one thing. Like I don't know. It's just so twisted. I mean, for listeners or anybody that, like me or my friends, like we love watching serial killer movies. We love watching horror movies. We love it. We get some form of gratification by watching this. You know what I mean? But like rape, that's like, you can't put that in a movie. And I will never get any sort of gratification from watching somebody get raped, whether it's real, not real, in a movie, in real life. But I can watch a movie like Texas Chainsaw Massacre where they like skin the dude and wear his face, and I get some gratification and joy from that. I think it's entertaining. I love it. But if somebody's getting raped, like I get a sick feeling in my stomach, you know, where like now I want to kill because that's just wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's just wrong. And in that Gacy thing, I remember the one dude, I think Gacy raped him and then he escaped. And then he went to the police.
Yes.
And the police didn't believe that a man could be raped.
Very true.
Yeah.
And he went then and he had remembered Gacy had drugged him and he was in the car bringing him to his house, and the guy kind of came to on the way, and he remembered
the highway sign.
He remembered the highway sign that was leading to Gacy's house, and he remembered the car, the type of car Gacy had. So he waited on the highway.
Yep.
And sure enough, Gacy passed by one day in the car, and he got the reg plate, and that's how the cops went then and arrested him again for. That's what began the investigation to Gacy, I think. Something like that.
Is there anything positive going on in the world right now?
I don't know.
There's got to be a way for us to end this on like a positive note.
Sorry for anyone that's listening. That's like, that was a pretty grim.
Oh, I'm sure if our listeners were turned off, they turned this off a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'm sure they didn't even make it this far.
Yeah, but we just thought we'd talk about it today because we both happened to watch the documentary at the same time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's pretty messed up. All I can say to people is take precautions and just be aware of your surroundings and be aware of people. Just don't always take people for face value. You know what I mean? Don't always take people for face value. And
I would say more importantly than that, love your children. Like, don't have kids if you're not ready. That doesn't mean you should abort them either. But like,
abort.
But like, I don't know. Maybe it's better not to have a kid at all than to bring a kid into a toxic environment. I mean, that's heavy. But like, if you're with a violent alcoholic man, and now you're pregnant and you have a kid and you bring that kid in and now the kid's in a fucked home, that is the kind of environment that, not necessarily a serial killer, but the kid's going to have imbalances, he's going to have anxiety, you know what I mean? Like, be a responsible parent. Be a responsible parent. Love your kids.
Do you know what, Yank? Let's leave it at that for today.
Cool.
Listeners, next week we will have something on a lighter note.
Yeah,
damn
we will.
Sure.
We will.
Follow the podcast on Instagram, Paddy The Yank _podcast. We're going to have a YouTube up and running very soon, so you can go onto YouTube and watch some videos. Yeah, like and subscribe. Hope you enjoyed that podcast. We're going to leave you with a little song here.
Sweet. All right, guys.
Check
have a
it
good
out.
one.
Bye-bye.
All right. Later.